You're listening to Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Join us as we explore how medical professionals can achieve stellar success in all areas of life. It's time to level up.
Hello, everybody. We're back at Stellar Success Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Dr. Tudor Francu, and I have a great guest today, one of our fellow doctors, former ER physician, Dr. Nazeer, who ventured into the other side of the world, in the investing world, and has a lot of wisdom, I would say, that we can take from this journey. So, how are you, Dr. Nazeer?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
I would just ask you, just a little bit of kind of overview of your career. How did you start in medicine? What did you do? Where are you now? And what do you think success means to you?
Great question. Well, I've, traveled the traditional path. I wanted to be a doctor since I was 10 years old. I went into college and medical school residency straight through, and I was practicing emergency medicine. I still am practicing emergency medicine full time. And really, a few years ago, I realized, I was very burned out and I wanted to cut back on my clinical time. And I realized that, I really couldn't cut back on my clinical time yet. And I needed to continue to build my retirement savings. And at that time, the stock market was also doing very poorly. And I noticed that my returns were, very poor as well. And I started looking into alternative investments as a way to speed up my retirement savings and also potentially create passive income for myself as I approach retirement. So that was my first objective. And then I started looking into how to do that. I started doing some research, whether, investing in single family homes or multifamily, et cetera. And I came across mentorship programs. So I joined those. And then I learned how the model works. And definitely commercial real estate appealed to me more because it was more scalable. It could be done more passively. But I realized pretty quickly that becoming an owner operator was going to be a very big undertaking. Like it's a second job, right? And it's a lot of financial liability as well as responsibility in managing the property. So I moved away from that and went towards syndications because I felt like that was more feasible with my full-time ER job. And in that process, I met several syndicators and some asked me to raise capital. And so I briefly joined a team as a co-GP to raise capital for their deal. And that was like not bad experience, but not a great experience. I realized that a lot of people come together to form these general partnership teams without a lot of history. They don't know each other very well, or they don't have everything figured out, but they're just coming together to execute the deal. And that didn't appeal to me. I really felt like I didn't want to get into partnerships with people that I didn't know well and in an industry that I'm just learning about as well. So in that process of me trying to figure out how to move forward, I was approached by another developer to raise capital, and their only model was to do the fund of funds. So we created a fund of funds to participate in that deal and raise capital that way. And the reason they even reached out to me was because I'd already created the Doctor Investor, and we were doing some in-person events that got their attention, I think. And so a lot of people reached out to me to raise capital, and a lot of developers or sponsors. And, it just so happened that this deal really appealed to me that they had. And also they had a lot of infrastructure in place to make the investors feel more secure. Like they had audited financials, they had a third-party fund administrator, et cetera. So all of these things really made me feel more comfortable raising capital for them. And so that's what I did. I created a fund of funds with their fund administrator and raised capital for their deal. And that's basically what I did. I mean, I haven't done a lot of active investing or acquiring properties or anything like that. I'm not doing that. And my main focus is to really protect the passive investor. That's what I'm really focused on, and how to create solutions for other passive investors like myself. Because what I've found in the industry is that there really isn't much for the passive investor. There's a lot of education out there for people who want to actively invest in real estate, but there are not a lot of, safeguards for passive investors. And so my goal is to really create more of that, how to provide vetted operators and vetted deals to other passive investors like myself.
Yeah, that's a great goal. And I think you touched on several subjects that are very important, I would say, for the medical community, the people that are, full-time physicians. They either don't want to practice anymore, they want to retire, or they don't want to, invest in stock market. And most of them have time, but they don't have the knowledge to invest. And that's, I think, something that you contribute probably more in educating people about what those investments are and they mean to them. The question that I have is, working with physicians in general, what do you think the main culprit is for them in terms of knowledge? Because most of us are very educated people. We know a lot. We learn a lot. We have a lot of school. We're open-minded people, but for some reason, the business side of things and the financial side of things are not clicking to many of us. How do you approach them when you educate people like this?
Do you feel that I mean, just to get the question, are you asking why they are not interested or why they are not
Yes,
doing well?
why they know medicine, but and they're earning a lot of money. They have a lot of, I would say, capital, but for some reason, many people don't know how to grow this nest or how to make them, available to investments, like you mentioned, alternative investments. When you start educating them, what do you think is the main issue with those individuals in our profession to reach out to the other side and start learning more about finances, about business, about how you can branch out into things like this to be more independent, because that's what it is finally. It's more freedom and more financial independence.
Well, I think there's several factors. First of all, I think that there is a fear of the unknown, right? Whenever we're not familiar with something, it's an undertaking to become familiar with it and get that knowledge. So I don't think there's a lack of capability. I think it's a lack of willingness because we're so busy and we're so
Mhm.
occupied. We've already spent over a decade becoming a doctor, right? I mean, several years. And then we're working for several years and we're specialized in that particular field. Now to take on a whole nother subject and knowing how physicians think, right? We feel like we need to become an expert. We need to really dive deep to really feel comfortable with something. And I think we don't have the time or the bandwidth to really dive into something totally new. And I think there is a lack of, and I think so. First, I think there's that lack of time and energy to devote to acquiring that knowledge that we need or the knowledge that we would need to feel comfortable with it. And then I think there is an unwillingness because that's not what we went into medicine to do, right? Like
Yeah.
we're not interested in that. That's not our mindset. We went into maybe take care of patients or we were fascinated by science or research or things like that. That's what really, enlivens us. We don't really feel like looking at spreadsheets and numbers very much. So I think that's the personality fit too, that we just don't have that desire to, why? We're making a good income. We're invested in our 401ks. Like, why do we need to bother with all this extra stuff? Let it go. So I
Yeah.
think there's that. And I think there's a lack of trust. There's a lack of trust with the financial industry and these investment opportunities. And I think that people think, yeah, it sounds all wonderful and great, but is it really so? Like how do we vet those? How do we vet those deals and operators? It's very difficult. And even, being in the industry and being exposed to all that and having the resources and other experts to lean on, I still find it difficult. I mean, it's a process, right? It takes a tremendous
Yeah.
amount of time and money and energy to vet deals and vet operators. So I think it's all of those things. I think there's the fear of the unknown. There is the lack of willingness because that's just not our personality fit to go into money and investing in business. And then I think there's a lack of trust.
Yeah, I think that's probably the main three. I was thinking too also, in terms of you know vetting the sponsors and the people that do the active investing for medical professionals that want to be passive investors. Um, when you approach with your business, with your funds of funds, people like this, do you think, what are the main questions you get? What do you need to have in the back of your mind, expecting, questions expecting from them?
From the investors, you mean?
Yes.
I think investors want to know how well I know the sponsor. And if I'm investing with the sponsor, what is my history and the sponsor's track record. And, all of this is, again, very subjective because, I mean, the sponsor can tell you their track record, I suppose, but if you haven't experienced it, if you haven't actually gone through full cycle with them, it's very difficult to attest to that, right? So I think that's the main thing that if I'm raising capital for another sponsor, that's what most people want to know is if I'm investing with them and what my history is with that person.
I see. Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm sure, being successful in this field, you probably had some moments where things didn't necessarily work out, or you had setbacks, or something didn't necessarily pan out for you and for your investors. Can you mention anything that kind of, got you back and like move you forward with more motivation?
Yes, I think my first deal that I raised capital for, it was a multifamily operation. They had, I think, 20 people on the GP team. It was really overwhelming. And I didn't know any better, right? I didn't know that that was a problem. I just went ahead and said, okay, they're going to let me be on the GP team if we raise capital. I didn't raise that much capital for them, honestly, but just being part of that process and seeing how they were conducting themselves, how the meetings were going, how the communications were. And then what happened is a couple of the partners fell out, and these were key partners on the GP team. There was some disagreement between the partners, and they dropped out of the GP team. So it was just kind of sloppy and uncomfortable for everyone involved. And that's where I realized very quickly was that that is not something I want to be a part of. Like, these people didn't know each other very well. They'd only known each other maybe a year or so, and then they were on this multi-million-dollar deal together. They're raising 10 million. There's a 20-some million-dollar investment. And even now, like, I'm still invested in it personally, and it's not going that great. It's just sort of teetering along. But I think it's a the biggest problem there is communication, right? Like, I felt like the team was not very cohesive and they weren't communicating very well with their investors. There was a lack of transparency. Like, there was a very first of all, they didn't meet their equity raise, and they got another mezzanine debt. And then the CapEx budget, I think, is overblown. Like, they're spending more on capital expenditures than they had anticipated. So obviously the cash flow is not there. It's a lot of these kind of problems that we all saw multifamily have over the last few years. And I'm really happy that I did not have more investors in the deal. I think it would have been more difficult to explain because, I didn't have much history with that operation either, right? I had just simply met them and agreed to work with them. So that's what I learned very quickly, is that don't partner with people. Like, and when you are a limited partner, you're a limited partner. You are a partner, but at least your liability and, is limited. However, if you're going to be a co-GP with someone, or invest in any kind of business or partnership, I think we have to be very careful because, again, and the other thing, I've spoken to so many doctors now through my business. I'm meeting physicians all over the country, and we're talking about these things. And I think physicians have a different work ethic or code of conduct, right? We have a certain responsibility to our to our patients, and we take that very seriously. And we think other people have a similar code of conduct. I think that we think that other people also have our best interest at heart, or that they're going to do the right thing, or they have, something like that. And they really don't. People are really not as ethical sometimes, and they don't have that sense of purpose or duty to their investors always. And so you have to be really careful. And I think that's why having, checks and balances in place is very important for anybody raising capital. And that's why I think, the people that we've invested with, they not only have a 10-year track record, but they have audited financials and a third-party fund administrator. Those kinds of things I think are really important when you're taking other people's money, that it have a very clear path to the project and there's no confusion who's handling the money and how. So I think that was my worst, or first and worst lesson, was just that. And I've been fortunate since. I mean, I haven't exited the deals, so I can't really speak for the full experience of investing with those people. But I think that just being mindful of who you're investing with, the person the sponsor or lead on that project is very important. So I think we have to pay attention to those things.
Yeah, and you mentioned trust and the fact that you need to vet the sponsors, and communication is very important. And I think, ultimately any investment is a risk. No matter where you go, different types of investments, there is always a risk. But the way you communicate and you mitigate that kind of risk, and you tell people what the problems are and what you're thinking the plan should be, I think makes more trustful relationships in between the community and the team that's invested there. And I think it's probably natural for a lot of people to go back into their own shell when things are not going well and not communicate, and that creates even more problems with the relationship in the team. So yeah, I totally agree with you. I've been through a couple of deals like this, and I think even if the deal doesn't work well and we have a good communication, I think the synergy of that kind of communication makes the deal better.
Yeah, of
Because
course.
it's a mindset issue in between the team to find a better solution by communicating better. So I want to go back a little bit into the introspection of a physician who invests in real estate or in any other alternative investments. What do you think the skills or the habits you have does not get enough credit in the success you have?
Oh, I think I'm very, I think it's grit, right? I just keep going. Like, I think maybe that's emergency medicine in me, or maybe that's just my personality. I think I just keep going. Like, I'm not stopped by things. I don't really, you know, wallow in self-pity or worry about things too much. I'm not an anxious person. I'm very much someone who's very bold and tries new things all the time. You know, like I'm not afraid to try something new. So that's my best and worst characteristic, I guess. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, that's, you keep going,
Yes, I just keep
no
going.
matter what. Yes. Now, in terms of your daily approach, most people, most successful people, I would say, have a very structured schedule, very planned, very routine-like, with a lot of things that they like to do and they need to do. How is your day structured? How, give us a little bit of like, uh, you know, glimpse into your plan, into your structure of the day.
Wow, I wish I had structure. Like I don't think I have any kind of structure at all because you have to understand I'm an emergency medicine doctor, right? What do we work in shifts? It's all over the place. We have every week is different. Some
Mm,
days I'm working early morning and then 2 days later I'm working overnight and it's like sometimes weekends, sometimes weekdays. There's really no pattern to an emergency medicine schedule most of the time. So I'm very well, that's just been my life. You know, I've been an ER doctor for 25 years, and if you count residency, 28 years. So all through that, I've never had a routine. So unfortunately, that is a real drawback when it comes to business. You know, you need some sort of, I think, structure and systems in place. And so I'm still learning how to create those systems. And I do hire people and they kind of force the system on me, you know, like their system. Which is a good thing because then at least I'm held accountable to some kind of systematic process of whatever we're doing. So I think, yeah, I don't have a routine at all. I wake up, you know, if I'm off, I usually wake up reasonably early and I try to exercise. I meditate. I, you know, do the usual things, but nothing routine. It's not the same any day. So
yeah, yeah, that's
I'm the
great. I
wrong
know, I
example for
agree.
that.
Emergency medicine is one of those specialties where you have to be there no matter what, and it's not very flexible in terms of shifts, and you mentioned some of those things. Um, Now, going back to your company that you created and your venture into investment, when did you form this? How's it going? What are your goals of educating people into that, finance/investment land?
Yeah. So that's what I'm most passionate about. I think even more than real estate, it's really the company that I'm creating. And I'm more passionate about actually entrepreneurship, I feel, than even real estate. I love real estate and I think it's a wonderful vehicle to invest in. But what I'm really grateful for is that I created this company, the Doctor Investor, and it's more for education. But the beauty of being your own boss and being an entrepreneur is that you get to create it. You get to modify things and grow in directions that you think is best for you and for your clients, right? And so for me, I've always been very focused on the passive investor and the physician who wants to invest passively in syndications or what have you, and how to serve them best. You know, what can I create? What kind of solutions, tools, resources can I provide to the passive investor to help facilitate their journey? And that could be in the stock market, it could be in real estate, oil and gas, whatever they want to do. Like, how can I? And so I think by being focused on that mission, I have, you know, I've really evolved in different, like what we're creating now going forward. Like in January, we're going to be launching a private community that will bring together these experts, whether they're, you know, investing in the stock market or real estate, and provide like access to these experts for our investors to ask questions of them, to just learn from them, not get pitched to, not have to invest, but just continue to learn and understand the business and understand how these people think, what is their philosophy, their problem solving, their communication styles, et cetera. Like get to know them before they work with those people. And I think that is something I want to create. And then also providing tools or a system to vet operators and deals, I don't think really exists in the world. I mean, I've been asking many people, like, what is your system? There's not a system. There's a list of questions. You hope they answer them. You hope they give you the right answers or the correct answers, but there's no agency, there's no industry standard. And that's what I'm very focused on creating, is some sort of standard process for vetting these deals and operators so that we can, provide some security to that passive investor.
Yeah, this is a great goal, and I think we should have more people like you doing this thing, like you and me, for example. But it's funny when I think about this, that a lot of people and a lot of doctors in general, they easily, with no questions, invest in stock market without having any clue about the companies or the funds or the mutual funds or whatever it is. And they just trust the system, right? Anything can happen any day. The stocks goes up and down. You have no control about it. But when it comes to this like passive, real wealth investments that you are available to invest in, like you mentioned, there is completely lack of financial education, and people like you can definitely get involved into this and tell people what to look for, because this is not a stock market investment. This is a wealth building avenue for them to not only preserve their wealth but grow it. So I certainly congratulate you for your initiative, and I hope everything is going to go well with your enterprise from now on. What are you looking for? What's the project coming? What are you excited about in the next year?
Well, first, we're creating the private online community, the Doctor Investor Club, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with our developer partners and create more deals, and hopefully partner with them on some of these projects going forward.
Awesome. Now, if you learn a lot in the process, and I'm sure you educated yourself very well before teaching others. With what you know right now, if you look back when you started this whole thing, what will be your advice to yourself?
I would say don't try to take the easy route. There are no easy buttons, and I think I joined mentorship programs, which could be good. It's just that these were very expensive mentorship programs. And I think my hope was that they would make it easier. They would simplify the process. They would shorten my, time invested. And I think there's nothing like that, really. You are going to have to go slow and invest in some deals, get to know some people, or continue to educate yourself, read books. There's so much information online or for less money than mentorship. So I think I would probably start with that, like read some books, listen to podcasts, meet people who are doing this type of business, and then learn from them first. And then certainly, when you're at a certain level where you really want to grow, you can join some mentorship programs that might help you do that.
Yeah, that's great advice. I totally agree with that. So Dr. Nazeer, how can people get in touch with you, learn more about what you're doing, and learn about investing?
Yeah, definitely. I'm on LinkedIn under my name, Shameem Nazeer, or The Doctor Investor. And my website is thedoctorinvestor.com. And I'm on all the, Instagram, Facebook, all those good things. So and I'm trying to start a YouTube channel. It's going very slowly, but be patient. Hopefully we can create more content on there. And that way it'll be more, digestible content, hopefully, that we can kind of get to learn in a more gradual way.
That's great. Well, I hope everything is going to go well for you, and more people are going to learn and educate themselves in this field, because I think this is the future of getting less burnout, more wealthy retirements, and in general, happier medical professionals. Thank you.
Yes, that's what we want. Thank you.
That's a wrap on Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Interested in joining us? Go to stellarsuccesspodcast.com/guest to apply. Stay stellar and level up.